mystery, so much more to learn. Revealed in life stories, the beginning of time. It's a wonder I am here in this life. Over billions of years, it's amazing how I ended up right here. Mystery, sweet mystery, I'm in awe of you. I reverence in your glory. Oh, mystery, sweet mystery, so much more to learn. Revealed in life stories, from the stars up above to the deep sea below. There's an energy we know. It cannot be explained, but I feel it in the bright warm sun and in the cool wet rain. Mystery, sweet mystery, I'm in awe of you. I reverence in your glory. Oh, mystery, sweet mystery, so much more to learn. Revealed in life stories. Mystery, sweet mystery, I'm in awe of you. I reverence in your glory. Oh, mystery, sweet mystery, so much more to learn. Revealed in life stories. Love of the mystery, hope in what can't be seen. Love of the mystery, hope in what can't be seen. Love of the mystery, hope in what can't be seen. Love of the mystery, hope in what can't be seen. Love of the mystery, hope in what can't be seen. Love of the mystery, hope in what can't be seen. Mystery, sweet mystery, I'm in awe of you. I reverence in your glory. Oh, mystery, sweet mystery, so much more to learn. Revealed in life stories. Mystery, sweet mystery, I'm in awe of you. I reverence in your glory. Oh, mystery, sweet mystery, so much more to learn. Revealed in life stories.
That sounded great.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. We were just listening to IPL's own Joshua Long's music. Everyone give him some jazz hands. We love it. My name is Maddie Smith. I will be speaking some tonight, but for right now, I want to pass it over to my colleague, Madison Stockner, who's going to start us off with some spiritual grounding tonight.
Hi, everyone. My name is Madison Stockner. I use she, her pronouns. I am the summer intern for Interfaith Power and Light DMV. Yeah, I'm going to do like a little spiritual grounding tonight, and I'm going to read a little section from Saving Us, which is a book by Catherine Hayhoe. And in one section, it's called What Faith Can Teach Us. And I'm just going to read a little bit of the section. So, as a Christian myself, though not one who attends a mega church, I find it particularly striking how the Bible talks about fear in action. In the Apostle Paul's letter to Timothy, he states simply that God has not given us a spirit of fear. So if we feel fear and respond to climate change out of fear of either the solutions or the overwhelming nature of the impact, that fear is not coming from God. Instead, Paul continues, God has given us a spirit of power, which enables us to act instead of being frozen or paralyzed. We have been given a spirit of love, to have compassion for others, which means caring for others, putting their needs first as we act. And finally, we have been gifted with a sound mind that we can use to make good decisions based on facts and data that God has given us and made evident in his creation. So that just really stood out to me because I have seen this summer that fear can be a huge blocker when it comes to people's perception of climate change or even the environment and solutions. But seeing it from more a biblical and Christian point of view, like fear can hold us back from many different things, but then using the power that God has given us, which is the spirit of power and love, to show compassion for others, whether that be ourselves, our neighbors, families, or even our congregation in that community. So I just ask all of y'all to try and take everything from this session with love or not in the presence of fear, to learn more and just be accepting or wanting to ask questions. So yeah, and I'll hand it over to Josh now.
Thank you so much, Madison. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Joshua Long. I'm congregational organizer with Interfaith Power and Light, DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia. I use he, him pronouns. And first, want to welcome you all to our second installment of our new program, Solar and Clean Energy Shepherds. And yeah, woo. So I'm really excited. This is something we've been thinking about and mulling on for a few months, and the first one was great, and we're so grateful to see everybody here on this second call. And we're especially grateful because we have a special guest tonight. We have our friend Steve Weaver here, who has a longtime friend of Interfaith Power and Light, and is going to talk about energy assessments, energy audits, energy walkthroughs, and how that can really benefit your congregation and show next steps in the process of having clean energy and going green, and doing our best to take care of the environment as our values, all our faith values say we should. And just a brief intro, I came into IPL about a year ago, and so I was introduced to Steve Weaver, and at the time he was working with local utilities on the Empower program, and was able to come out to congregations and do assessments for free and make recommendations and such. And now he's with a new organization, HBS Solutions, and there's even more he can do, and he's going to talk a little bit about that. But over the past year, I've seen Steve help congregations make decisions about how they can save energy, how they can tap into some of these programs, these benefits, these incentives that in some ways that we've been advocating for, that are starting to become policy and that are now available for congregations to tap into. And so I've seen congregations, whether it's weatherization, insulation, LED lighting, looking at their heating, looking at different things that they can do to save energy or electrify. Steve has helped us out with that, and so we're really grateful for Steve being here tonight. And you'll hear just a little bit about that. But a recap of last month, we did talk about solar and power purchase agreements. So if you missed that, you can actually go to our YouTube page, and that'll be available for you to watch and learn more about where we're at with solar and power purchase agreements. The great thing about these new incentives coming out and policies that are happening is that more is available to congregations, but also means more is changing. So it's a good way to get some sort of what's the latest in the region on solar. And so that's kind of what we're going to also do today, is get what's the latest on energy audits, energy assessments, and how your congregation can access these resources, have energy audit, and then kind of see what else is available out there. So without further ado, I want to pass it on to, nope, I'm gonna pass it back to Maddie. Looking at our intro. What's gonna happen is Maddie's gonna talk a little bit first just about some of the compliances, why an audit would make sense, looking at ways to how you should be thinking about saving energy for a congregation, and some of these other things before we move on to Steve. And then there will be a time for Q&A to ask questions. So I will make sure that any questions are answered. And so if you have anything come up, feel free to put in the chat or something. We'll make sure we get to it around the time. So I'm gonna pass it back to Maddie.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. I'm Maddie Smith. My pronouns are they, them, and I serve as IPL's Clean Energy Shepherd, which basically means that it's a newish role in 2024, but that basically means that I help congregations and individuals that come to me with any sort of, solar, heat pump, energy efficiency question. I connect congregations to resources like some of the things we'll be talking about tonight. And what we have really discovered that, most congregations don't always know where to start in terms of they think about, well, like we're paying high energy bills. We don't have $300,000 laying around to like do a complete building retrofit right away. Like, how do we know where to get started? And the first thing I always tell people is you have to do some sort of energy audit or walkthrough to even figure out where to start for the vast majority of congregations who maybe don't have like building energy professionals that are part of their congregation. So I'm going to go ahead and share just a few slides before I then pass it on to Steve, who's the real expert here, and I'm glad he's here so he can fill in any of the things that I've missed. Okay. So a lot of, when people come to me and want to think about like a heat pump or, boy, we haven't thought about LED lights in a long time. Like what sort of upgrades should we be making? I always tell people it's highly likely that you could be saving energy and money, but like, let's figure out how. We know like our congregations have limited budgets. You don't have a bunch of extra money to be spending on high energy bills to utilities when we could, really get those numbers down as well as be able to, do our part in our congregations to help care for our planet by reducing that energy usage. Another reason why many people these days are beginning to think about an energy audit is that we're starting to see in different jurisdictions, our congregational buildings are started to become covered by laws called Building Energy Performance Standards, or BEPS. You might see that. BEPS is that sort of acronym is thrown around a lot in the climate world, but it stands for Building Energy Performance Standards. And right now, those exist in DC and Montgomery County. There's like one last little vote that will take place this upcoming fall to finalize what the actual standards are. And then Maryland, the state of Maryland has also passed, a law that directs the Maryland Department of the Environment to work on those regulations. So we will see those at some point, like actually crop up and become regulations in Maryland. So right now in DC, the most folks that need to worry about like meeting a building energy performance standard are in buildings that are above 50,000 square feet, which does include some houses of worship. And I'm in touch with a lot of those folks. But there's many more houses of worship that are in that 25,000 to 50,000 square foot range who won't need to worry about meeting a building energy performance standard until like 2032. But we want to get started and think about like, it's never too early to get started to think about how are we going to reduce our energy usage to be able to meet these laws in place. I've included, and I'll send these slides out so people can see them. But some of these years may seem farther off, but they're not that far off when you actually think about it. So it's never too early to get started. And a lot of people ask me, so like, and Steve will sort of go more into this, but I just briefly wanted to mention this near the beginning because I know folks are probably going to ask about it. So what's the difference between an energy walkthrough versus an energy audit? And this is like a very dumbed down version of how to talk about the differences between them. But really a walkthrough is more of a brief review of where you're building, looking at your building's equipment and your building and your space, and where you should start to think about like energy upgrade projects. And it's just like it sounds, a walkthrough. Someone like Steve will like come to your congregational building, walk through all of it with you, and then go over some of the things that they just noticed right away as a energy professional entering your building. An audit is really more of an in-depth analysis of like numerically where and exactly how much energy you could save from various different upgrade projects. And because of that, it's also more expensive. Usually I've seen rates for energy audits be between like 1,000 to 5,000, depending on where you are and the company and the building. And that's a lot of money that most congregations don't have. So that's why something like a walkthrough or an informal assessment is very appealing to a lot of our congregations. So briefly, before I pass it to Steve, I just want to talk about, because this is what people always want to know, like if it was totally free, everyone would do an energy audit. I like to think, particularly like the congregations that we work with who want to do their part to help care for our planet, and also would love to be saving money on their energy bills that they could use for other parts of their mission. So a lot of people don't know this, which is why I wanted to make sure everyone knows that in Maryland, there's a slight asterisk there depending on what your electric utility is in Maryland. But the free energy walkthrough is available through the Empower Maryland Energy Efficiency Program. And then part of the cost of a full audit is also covered by that program. So for anyone in Maryland, please take advantage of this. And this is also true for like homeowners as well, is my understanding. For folks specifically in Montgomery County, Maryland, we have a really great partnership with the Montgomery County Green Bank there. They can pay for part or occasionally all of a in-depth energy audit depending on where your congregation is located. They have a great technical assistance program. We work with them a lot to help congregations particularly go solar, but they also help finance energy upgrades as well, and are just great partners that we've loved working with. And for other folks in Maryland that don't have a green bank, you can still use the Empower incentives that we talked about on the previous slide. So for folks in Northern Virginia, there's a sort of hodgepodge of different resources that you might be able to take advantage of. So our partners at the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions, or FACS, they're a great organization that we work really closely with in Northern Virginia. They have a matching grant program right now, and I confirmed with them that they still have money available for congregations to apply for. They have an up to $2,500 matching grant to help pay for an audit, and that can include energy upgrades as well. So that's something that we definitely want to make sure our Northern Virginia folks can take advantage of. If you're in Fairfax County, the County Energy Conservation Assistance Program has its own grant program that's really great that quite a handful of houses of worship have already used. And that is 50% reimbursement up to $5,000 for the cost of an energy audit. That number can go higher depending on, they can reimburse up to 75% depending on where your congregation is located and whether it's located in what's called the EPA's like Justice 40 map that sort of like paints a picture of how affected communities across the country are by environmental injustice. And then it also covers more money for actual upgrades that come from like upgrade suggestions that you get from doing an energy audit. These two are things that I learned about recently, and if folks are Dominion or Novec customers, I'd love to connect you with the folks who can share more about this. But I was told that Dominion customers can get a free ASHRAE Level 1 energy audit for their congregations if you're a Dominion customer. And then Northern Virginia Electric Cooperative congregations that are customers there's a free energy walkthrough available, and I can connect folks. I'll send a follow-up email to everyone at the end of this, but I'm sure like if you're interested, we want to connect congregations to these resources. Okay. And that brings me to DC, which is sort of a letdown in terms of the incentives that are available there for congregations to take advantage of, which can seem sort of backwards because DC has such strong climate laws, but yet the actual incentives that are available, we've discovered, are not as in-depth as we would like. So there's no current incentives for audits available in DC. In contrast to Maryland, the district's energy efficiency program is run through its own separate sustainable energy utility. It's called DCSEU, or the DC Sustainable Energy Utility. And so they run the programs that they run the state's energy efficiency program, essentially. And we're working on several possible leads, including one with DCSEU for a potentially limited number of free energy walkthroughs for DC congregations. And so that's not in place yet, but it's something we're really hoping for. And then Joelle, our director, and I have also been scheming about putting together a sort of one-stop shop program to help congregations in DC pay for energy audits and upgrades, with the goal of helping those congregations that are the least energy efficient to be able to meet the Building Energy Performance Standards law in DC. So that is everything I wanted to share. But if you're in DC and interested in an energy audit, please still do reach out to me, because that is, as we sort of put together this program, one of the things that will be most helpful is having like this body of evidence to show like, wow, all of these people would love energy audits and they can't pay for it in the district. So let's talk. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Steve to share, and I will also be sharing Steve's slides. But yeah, thank you, Steve, for being here. We're very excited.
Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Josh. I'd like to say thank you to everybody here and Interfaith Power and Light for allowing me to speak tonight and be part of the meeting. My pronouns are he, him. So a little bit about myself, who I am, how we connected. I work as a project management professional for HBS Solutions. HBS Solutions, we are an independent technical services firm focused on operational efficiency and energy saving solutions. We're based in Edgewater, Maryland, and we work with congregations, utility customers of all sizes across the state of Maryland, District of Columbia, and Virginia. Prior to joining this team with HBS, which I did earlier this year, the beginning of 2024, I spent the past 10 years working on the Empower Maryland commercial and industrial programs, worked on a variety of responsibilities and tasks there: program development, program management, end use outreach, and collaborating with the utilities for maximizing their programs, maximizing incentives for congregations and their customers. So I want to talk a little bit about the building tune-up process. So when we talk about energy walkthroughs, energy assessments, or audits. There are some differences between each. Ultimately, one common goal is to help a facility owner or a building occupant better understand their current energy use, how their building is using energy, and then opportunities for improvement or being able to identify energy conservation measures. Some of those benefits then can be conserving energy, saving money, and extending the life of current equipment. So there's 3 phases to a building tune-up process. First is the study. With the study, oftentimes you can benchmark the building and then log that through the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, conduct the audit, and identify the energy conservation measures. That's the first step to get the analysis, get the understanding of the building. You have a plan and a roadmap of where you potentially can go. From there, the next step is implementation. So you're reviewing the study, looking at the proposed scope of work, looking at the different energy conservation measures that are identified, and determining which to proceed with, maybe all of them, maybe some of them. It really just depends upon your congregation, where you are in that process, and what you're looking to accomplish. And then the last part is post-implementation. That's important too. After those energy conservation measures have been made, we want to verify the building performance, ensuring that the systems are performing at a reduced energy use rate, and then being able to discuss next steps for savings. So that's a high-level building tune-up process overview. And when we talk about energy efficiency improvements and some efficiency strategies, I put together this short list. This is by no means exhaustive. There's many other measures or actions that can be taken. But once you conduct an audit or look at areas to improve and reduce energy use, first and foremost, you can always look for energy efficient lighting for spaces, maybe looking at newer LED technology, utilizing natural light. That will help with your lighting and the efficiency of your lighting. Another strategy is through an assessment, walkthrough, or an audit, certainly right sizing of the HVAC equipment. Oftentimes at different points throughout a building's life cycle, maybe at the construction phase or during additions and renovations, new equipment was installed. It may not have always been right sized. It may be over or it may be under. So that can be a source of inefficient energy use. Along with that is looking at those systems and ensuring that they have proper schedules for when the building is occupied or when the building is unoccupied. One of the keys for that is having or potentially looking to use a programmable thermostat. You can certainly see some energy loss or energy waste if systems are being run when the building is unoccupied or if they're scheduled improperly. Another strategy is adhering to service schedules and preventative maintenance practices. So looking at the different building systems and ensuring that potentially you're replacing or cleaning filters, cleaning coils, different maintenance strategies to help extend the life of the equipment, allow it to operate more efficiently. One of the other things I often see in looking at buildings is insulation levels. There can certainly be, heat loss, cooling loss, depending upon the season, when spaces or buildings are not insulated or improperly insulated. So those are just a few high-level things I see and some efficiency strategies to consider as you look at your congregation, look at your facility, and potentially identify where you would like to go. And then lastly, talking about some of the benefits with those actions or audits, walkthroughs, assessments. First and foremost, it'll improve the building efficiency. You'll save on your energy consumption. save cost on operations and maintenance. You can avoid potential future maintenance calls or maintenance issues with pieces of equipment. You'll extend the equipment service life, and you also see an increased resilience and reliability of systems. And then lastly, wanted to open the floor for any questions. I understand that was a high-level overview. If there's any specific questions, happy to take those, or if you'd like me to discuss any specifics in more detail, glad to do that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And we'll go ahead and send those slides out and Steve's contact info so that folks have it. I have a really quick question for Steve. So you've done lots of walkthroughs and audits for houses of worship, I'm guessing. What are some of the main red flags when you walk into a house of worship? What are some of the things that you notice you're like, oh, they could be saving energy like right away? Or does it, I mean, it obviously varies depending on the building, but.
Sure. No, great question. So every building and operation is unique and different, but one of the things I have seen more than once is unfortunately looking at space lighting. Sometimes lighting is on an on-off switch, so lights are left on in areas that are not in use. So I often advise or recommend looking at potential occupancy sensors or vacancy control sensors. That way, if the building's in use or a different group is using it and they're not always aware where different switches are, that once a space or room is left and unoccupied, then the lights will turn off based on the sensing. So that's one of the things I've seen, and understanding too, different congregations have different schedules. Sometimes maybe a program a certain night of a week could be, youth, it could be an external group. So not everyone is always as familiar with the facility itself. So that's probably the number one common opportunity I see.
Yeah, make it as easy as possible. Makes sense. Sharon. And you're muted, Sharon, if you're trying to speak.
There we go. Thank you so much, Maddie and Steve. I really appreciate this information. I'm with St. Peter's Episcopal in Arlington, and we are in the process of going through the energy audits as we speak. We have received 2,500 from FACTS. They're terrific to work with. That's been helpful. I want to just point out one thing. I don't think Dominion does an ASHRAE level 1 audit. What we have just gone through with them is kind of a it's kind of a cross between an audit and a walkthrough. They came in and they cleaned our HVAC and did some ductwork mending, and then they gave us a bid to undertake replacement of the LED lights at a discounted basis. So but the problem is the Dominion programs are very siloed, and we're trying to figure out how to network them when we're working with FACTS. But that's just background. My specific question is, should we expect from an ASHRAE level 2 audit, Steve, some kind of analysis of or at least an estimate of what kind of energy savings we will get for each specific item that we choose to implement?
Thanks very much, Sharon. That's a great question. Yes, if it's a true ASHRAE level 2 audit, there should be numbers or cost savings attached to each energy conservation measure. So for instance, with your organization and congregation, replacing the current lighting with LED lighting would be an ECM or energy conservation measure identified. Oftentimes that's maybe a capital expense or CapEx expense. So it would be correct, a separate silo or a separate program to pursue any incentives and rebates from the utility. But that or any other measures or energy savings opportunities that were identified in the assessment or audit can and should have cost savings estimates. So it would be a cost estimate as well as a projected energy savings
Okay.
on could be typically usually an annual basis.
That's really helpful. And then one last question. We were looking at doing a blower door test as part of the ASHRAE Level 2. We understood that this might help us pinpoint better insulation because there's an infrared component to it. I don't know very much about this. I'd love to get your feed on whether the extra effort or expense to go with the blower door test would yield particularly good results for us.
Sure. I think it would be beneficial. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly how the Dominion program deciphers when the blower door test is included in part of their auditing or if it's done by a separate contractor or vendor. But yes, that would be helpful in giving you insight and analysis into energy losses, and then you're able to correct those to see efficiency improvements.
Thanks. I don't think Dominion does an ASHRAE Level 2 plus blower door. We're looking at another contractor that was recommended by FACTS.
Okay, sure.
Thanks. Thanks very much.
And Sharon, thank you for your insight and your experience with the Dominion program. That's super helpful to hear. And, as we talk to more congregations who might want to do that, that's really great to know. There's a couple questions in the chat. So a related question to sort of Sharon's question is from JP, who asks, what is the difference between a level 1 and a level 2 energy audit, and when does it make more sense to go to level 2? That's level 2 is sort of what I've always heard people talk about, but I'm obviously not a building energy expert.
Sure. That's a good question. So I think the common acceptable industry standard kind of difference for level 1 and level 2 is almost how we broke down the slides earlier. An informal walkthrough or assessment is akin to a level 1. So it's certainly looking at the building, the facility, walking through, identifying different areas for improvement. Level 2 energy audit is going to be more thorough and more detailed. The organization or the individual will take into account utility bills. So they'll look at consumption. They'll want to see oftentimes building drawings and also have access to the entire facility, mechanical rooms, the roof, interior, exterior, and be able to look at everything, go back, prepare a detailed report identifying each energy conservation measure. There's also other industry terms for energy conservation measures. I've heard FIMs, facility improvement measures, any type of energy savings opportunity we can use as a common denominator. And then those will be listed out on what specifically they are, what the implementation would be for making that correction, the cost associated, as well as the energy savings implications.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So Bolan asked a great question, and Bolan, I definitely want to connect with you over email because it sounds like you've got a really great program going. But Bolan asks, after all of the walkthroughs and rebates are done, how are the congregations to pay for the upgrades? Well, it's different depending on where you live and what's available. I'll take a first stab at this, and then Steve can answer too in his experience. A lot of them are the utility incentive. So like your utility will have like a set incentive amount for like a certain piece of equipment. And if you install that equipment, you'll get the incentive from the utility. That of course doesn't cover, everything that, the whole cost of what you would pay in DC. So the DC, and that's mostly in Maryland, and then Dominion has a similar program as well. I don't know how the incentives compare between the Maryland utilities and Dominion. That's something I would have to look at. But in DC, they can offer what are called custom rebates, where they will look at your project Like if you have, they'll look at the current equipment you have in your building, they'll look at your proposed project. You have to come to them with a proposal from a contractor, and their engineers will calculate exactly how much energy you're going to be saving by doing this upgrade. And will calculate like a custom rebate amount, a custom incentive amount that they would then pay the congregation after this piece of equipment gets installed. And they can also pay slightly more to nonprofits that can prove they're like serving vulnerable people in their community, like congregations that have a like a food pantry or food bank, or serve have different different programs that they may offer. So that is always something I want to mention to our houses of worship, because so many of them are doing that work as well in their communities. In terms of other ways to pay for it, I know Bolan had mentioned CPACE. I'm sure you want to make sure folks know about that, which is a way to and I'll admit I'm not an expert on CPACE, and it's always confused me a little bit because congregations don't pay property taxes, but it's basically a way to, help finance building upgrades without having to pay upfront for those upgrades. And then, so a lot of people also ask me about Inflation Reduction Act incentives. That's the main conversation around that is around solar with the direct pay program that the IRS has now come out with, which basically allows nonprofits to take advantage of a tax credit that previously only people and companies that paid taxes could take advantage of. Basically, the IRS will pay you 30% of your clean energy, the cost of your clean energy projects, such as solar or a ground source heat pump, also known as geothermal. Unfortunately, a lot of people ask me about air source heat pumps and direct pay, as it's called, this 30% credit. And that is not currently covered by the law, which is an unfortunate loophole, it seems to me. And I think and then also, as I mentioned, even with some of these programs and incentives, we still find that some of this stuff costs a lot of money, like to deal with your dying, oil boiler, and to put in a heat pump, like that's a big cost. And so we're trying to think about and connect our community to all the different resources that are available, and then also dream up, what doesn't already exist that could benefit our community someday. Steve, do you have anything else to add in terms of paying for upgrades that an audit may suggest?
You covered a lot of it, Maddie. That was a great answer, very thorough. And one thing I would add or discuss is, right, so when you look at the audit or potential implications from the audit, sometimes you may have more behavioral or operations and maintenance type of opportunities. Those would then be paid for within the auditing program by the utility or the building tune-up program, which I had mentioned. Sometimes, right, you may see a recommendation or an outcome such as LED lighting or replacing mechanical systems. So then correct, those are typically your CapEx expenses, and those would be parallel or separate incentives or rebates from the local utility. There's also a variety of MDEA grants. Now I know that there is, being the 22nd of July, the new fiscal year just started. So I would make a recommendation to look into those, see where that is. Some of those are first come, first serve. And I myself need to brush up on what is currently being funded or being available. But that's an opportunity for funding for projects. So those are just some additional items to mention.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. David, I know you have your hand up. Also, your dog was very cute earlier. We appreciated your dog. And you're muted if you're trying to share.
There you go. There you go. Unmute. Hello, folks. Yes, he demanded attention as he tends to do from time to time. Two things. One, I'm currently in Colorado, but I am a member of the Westmoreland Congregation of UCC Church down on Westmoreland Circle on the DC line, about as southern Maryland as you can get without crossing the line into DC off our front porch. We just got an interconnection agreement. We negotiated a PPA last year. I'm going to be putting in took about a year to get through the process of PPA and the legal issues. We're in a very unique situation in that we're in Maryland. We are on a DC feeder line. So luckily, if folks, I'm sure it came up last month. I'm sorry I missed the discussion, but particularly if you're in DC, there's huge incentives for solar installations through PPA, much substantially more than in Maryland or in Northern Virginia, we found. So we lucked up in having both attributes. We'll actually be starting construction this fall. Actually, probably I understand we'll have the largest non-commercial installation in the county, potentially in the region, is by the size. We'll be picking up about 98% of all of our operating cost for electricity, which leads me to want to be sure that we are effectively using the electrical input that we have through this system and in connection with PEPCO. I guess a couple questions I have. Well, first off, if folks are interested in, or if you are looking for some insights on PPA negotiations or PPA contracts, et cetera, I would be glad to serve as a resource for that. I actually have a background as a solar contractor and work with Solar Lobby to show my age back under a Jimmy Carter administration before Reagan shut them all down. So would love to be of whatever value I can in those discussions. As far as energy audits go, Steve, when we are pricing out an energy audit, what is the professional standard? Is it square footage of building? Is it type of institution that leads to the determination of a cost for a phase 2 audit?
Sure. So there's a couple of different ways to look at that. There are some firms or vendors that may charge on a square foot basis. So I've seen anywhere from, it can be 3 cents to 25 cents per square foot. Other times it is a flat rate. So it's a dollar amount to conduct the audit. I've also seen where there is no cost for the energy audit. It's free, there's no cost. The provider then would ask the congregation to assign the incentive over to them. So there's no direct payment. That vendor just then receives the incentive. So it really is up to the organization and then also the vendor, to come to an agreement on how to proceed.
Yeah, Maddie, Steve, is there assistance, a directory, a method for seeking out and amongst the different types of contractors, contractor for an energy audit?
Yes, great question. I was gonna answer it without you even asking that as well, because I know people are probably thinking the same thing. So for your congregation's case, since you are in Montgomery County, I would send you all directly to the Montgomery County Green Banks Technical Assistance Program. They're amazing. They're great. They can help connect you with one of their like approved vendors who they'll pay for most. I can't say they'll pay for all of it. It depends on the congregation and your situation and where you're located.
Of course.
But they can definitely pay for a lot of it, which is great. And so they have like approved technical assistance partners that do that work that they work with. And so that's where I would send you all.
Perfect.
For folks elsewhere, so there's an organization we work pretty closely that's called Building Innovation Hub. And this is mostly talking about people in DC. And so they have a vendor program as well, where they like have vetted and approved different vendors that may do these sorts of, they could do audits or any sorts of other services they could provide on energy to your building. And so that they have a vendor like matching program where like they will send out, like you'll put together a statement of work of what you're looking for, and we can help congregations with that. And then they'll send it out and you'll receive bids for free from different vendors on that. And then you can take a look at them and see, you know, and Building Innovation Hub can also help you take a look and see, you know, what makes the most sense for your situation.
Perfect.
For
Oh, good.
folks,
Thank you.
yeah, for folks in other parts of Maryland, what I would do is, first of all, so the Empower Maryland program that we've all been talking about is run through like each utility. So you will want to go to like your utilities, Empower. Sometimes it's called like BGE Energy Savings, like is there, I think the name of their website. So there's like a different one for each utility. And what you'll want to go is like you can go there and sometimes they'll list who their like approved contractors are for that. And many times you like if you find a contractor first, they should be able to tell you like, oh yeah, we're an approved like Empower contractor for BGE and Pepco, Maryland, you know, depending on where you're at. And like we can do that through the program for you. That's usually what it should be, how I would go about it. And then in Northern Virginia, we have our friends at Fax have done some vetting of different contractors and congregations that have done energy audits. And so that's something we can also help connect folks to.
Perfect.
Looking
You know,
at
one additional thought. Our building was building 48. It has a wonderful mix of heating and air conditioning systems that have been patched together over the years. That's actually our primary focus. But one of the things that we found was that a major source of thermal movement for our building were the doors. And it just so happens that there is an entirely different funding source that's they're very sexy right now within the area for security. So we ended up putting in thermal doors and replacing all our doors, not through energy efficiency, but through solar support, through grants from the state of Maryland, the federal government, and the county of Montgomery. So think outside the box when you're looking at buildings that are in security.
Security program?
It was all three. It was out of the Infrastructure Act that came down and then filtered down. There's both federal money available, state and local funding for security, which will cover installation of new windows and doors, which have to meet just current thermal standards. I mean, so there are some interesting ways to backdoor some money for thermal.
That's a great point, David. I'm going to follow up with you because I would love to be able to show people, you know, that sort of thinking outside the box in terms of, you know, achieving multiple goals through that.
Definitely. I just sent my email in the chat, so feel free to.
Thank you, David.
We'd love to help.
Yes. So I know there's a couple more questions in the chat that I want to make sure we get to. Tom mentioned that the Arlington Library has a thermal camera you can borrow, which sounds super fun. And I'm sure there's potentially other libraries that have that available as well. So I've been working with JP on a project at their church in DC. They're looking to do a heat pump upgrade, but JP asks, are you familiar with any DMV facilities that are doing thermal storage / load shifting in order to lower capacity requirements? And my understanding, JP, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're having trouble finding someone who's thinking about this the way that you all are hoping to do your project at Reformation.
Oh yeah, sorry for lurking here without a camera, but yeah, we're kind of looking at not cutting edge, maybe cutting edge 10 years ago kind of stuff, And it turns out that a lot of the people in the DC area are pretty old school. And so it's really hard to get people to talk, even consider the conversation when you're talking about anything that seems even remotely new. And so, yeah, we're struggling a little bit. Very interested to hear if anybody else has done anything around here, and if anyone, who worked with whom and all that stuff.
Yeah, Steve or any of the other professionals on this call, do you know anything about that? What is it called? Thermal storage load shifting?
So I don't have too much experience with that. I can definitely look into it and try and talk to a few colleagues in the office and then provide some follow-up. But I do apologize, I don't have a direct knowledge.
Yeah, I don't either. JP is the first person who asked me about this, and I was like, oh, that's a good
Yeah, the
question.
basic idea is if you've got a heat pump, especially if you've got a hydronic system, you are creating hot or cold water to heat or cool the air in the building. And since it's just water, you can put another tank in. That's the simplest version of thermal storage, is just have a bigger hot water tank and a bigger cold water tank. And you run the heat pump, during the off-peak hours when you don't need
Right,
it. You save up the energy, thermal energy, either hot or cold, and then your on peak hours, you don't need as a high capacity system, so it
right.
lets you get away with just using less, basically.
Okay. Yeah, maybe one thought is, I don't know if your utility provider would incentivize or compensate you on like a demand response program, or even have like maybe a demand response pilot program for this specific instance or process.
That's a question for Pepco, I think, but yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, and we've been in conversation too about this project with DCSCU and Building Innovation Hub. So I think we'll be able to connect you to some folks, JP, who hopefully can answer some of those questions about what might be possible. So really quickly, going through the chat. So Teresa wrote, benchmark was mentioned in the building tune-up process slide. Can you provide additional information about this? So really glad you asked this. I meant to create a slide about benchmarking and then I forgot. So I'm really glad you asked this. So benchmarking is pretty much a way to describe, tracking your building's energy usage. And the most common way we see this done is through what's called EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which I have gotten very deep into as part of my work helping DC congregations meet the district's benchmarking law, which is like the first step before you'll have to meet building energy performance standards. So basically, they want to collect all the data in the district from all these different types of buildings. And they do that by requiring folks to benchmark their building's energy usage. And I will say that the vast majority of the congregations I'm working with that are doing this because it's required by law, but that doesn't mean you have to. I know of a few congregations in Northern Virginia where there is not a benchmarking law, where folks are doing this just to sort of track their energy usage year by year, how much they're paying. And also, once you have more than a year's worth of data in it, the system will give your building what's called an Energy Star score, which you can use to like compare yourself relatively to other buildings to see sort of where you're at. And so and basically that just means like you create your account, you enter details about the building, how big it is, how is it used, and then every month you'll enter your usage information from your electricity and gas bills. And I am happy to help anyone with that if you're interested in starting, whether or not you're required to do that by law. It can, once you get the hang of it, it can be a really great tool to sort of show how, where there's room for improvement, or if relatively it looks like your building is doing pretty good compared to, other buildings of that same type. Let me just scroll down and see. Dale asked a question about congregations with multiple buildings on a campus. It looks like that's been answered pretty well in the chat. And then Joelle and Bullen were talking about CPACE and basically how that can be a way to finance energy efficiency upgrades in your congregation. Thanks, Bullen. I'll connect with you on that. Are there any other questions that we should get answered right now while we have Steve here? I'm also happy, like, please, I'm going to put my email in the chat. If your congregation is interested in an energy walkthrough or audit, no matter where you're located, like, please go ahead and send me a note. Here's my email in the chat. Yeah, Sharon, go ahead.
Yeah, Maddie, I had one other question about CPACE. I just started getting into this recently. And so my question is going to be one of complete ignorance nearly, but I don't really understand how the interest rates are set. I know there are different financial institutions that provide, it's not a loan, it's an assessment on the property that goes, you know, stays with the property if the property were ever sold, which for churches is, you know, houses of worship is probably not a big deal. But I just would like to understand how the interest rates are set. You know, is it a competitive market? And so if anybody can speak to that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that's a question that I do not know the answer to. Does anyone, Steve, do you want to take a go?
So I don't know specifically how they're determined. You are correct. It is a competitive market. In the past, I haven't seen any CPACE projects on nonprofits or 501c3s, but in working in the industry and seeing some at other times, I've noticed the rate is maybe anywhere from 0.5% to 2% higher than maybe say a private rate or a comparable rate through another provider outside of PACE.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bolan, do you want to share anything else about that? I know you've said a lot about CPACE in the chat, which is exciting to me.
Yeah, sorry, where the environment I was, it wasn't the best for me to get on audio. But yeah, the underwriting of it varies depending on the institution. What Steve just said was correct. However, what we try to make people aware of is that, I mean, remember, you're not paying for this upfront. So of course it is a little percentage more than the other traditional ways. However, you're not coming out of pocket and you're only getting this money based off of the underwriting confirming that the savings is going to pay for the job. So it's not something that you would even have the ability to do if it's not proved that the savings could pay for the cost. So, you know, some of the things aren't really but so concerning because you may not even have the opportunity after the review is actually done. But most cases, from what I've seen as far as nonprofits, a lot of, at least I'm just to let you all know, I'm in Baltimore City. So when I go out in Montgomery County, it's different. Like you all just said, a lot of their pastors and preachers in the congregation, just to be frank with you, they understand the finances a little bit, so that doesn't scare them away a lot. A lot of the pastors here in Baltimore City, because of the mortgages, the underwriting and the bank is taking priority on that mortgage, that scares people. So it's just a, you know, education barrier. That's the biggest piece, but that's small. It's not small, but the difference in percentage of the interest rate that you'll get with PACE is a little bit higher. But again, it's because of the guarantee of you getting the money up front, and the job is going to be for sure paid for, and you know you're pretty much getting a guarantee that the work will get done, and the contractor will get a guarantee as well, which is a big issue in the contractor world as well, right?
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And like, as you said in the chat, like, you know, people are going to be saving on day one from the upgrades that are made to their building. I'll also just mention that when people are thinking about capital projects, often there are different, like, I know for some of the Christian denominations, there are different like denominational loan organizations that will loan money for capital projects in congregations. and there's starting to be more conversation around that with clean energy. I'll also say that there's a Baltimore area loan fund. Joel, what's it called? It's from Pearlstone, right? Do you want to hop in and just say?
Oh yeah,
more?
let me find the page about it.
Yeah.
I think it's called the Green Loan Fund. It originally began, hi everybody, I'm Joelle from Interfaith Power and Light, also on the team.
Boss,
Um,
that's great.
Yeah, Pearlstone, on behalf of the Baltimore area Jewish community, started this loan fund, and originally it supported Jewish institutions in doing energy upgrades, but then eventually they expanded and just offer a very favorable loan to any nonprofit community organization in the Baltimore metro area that is interested. I'll find the page about it and put it in the chat, but it is
Yeah.
not well known.
Yeah, it's not well known outside of the Jewish community, and because congregations of all faiths can now take advantage of it, we want to make sure people know about that. There's also so the Montgomery County Green Bank, for folks that are in Montgomery County, can usually provide a better loan than what you would get from like a commercial lender. It may not always be as good as what some congregations can get through, like, say, a denominational lender, but that is just an option I want to make sure people know about as well. And I know we're just past 8, and I want us to wrap up soon, but also want to make sure if there are any other last questions that people want to ask, please go ahead. I'll also be sending out a follow-up email to everyone that registered for this call with contact info, the slides, and the recording of this as well. So please pass it to your community that may be interested in learning more, and please do reach out and email me. I put my email in the chat. I think it's still there. If you have, like, if you're like, yes, my congregation, this is where we are, we want to do an energy walkthrough, like, please help us figure that out. Like, I would love to do that and connect you all with folks. Yeah, any last questions before we go ahead and log off? Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. And yeah, thanks for being a part of our second Solar and Clean Energy Shepherds call. And if you have ideas for topics that we should cover on a future call, please also reach out to us, because we're planning on doing these monthly, and there's a lot of different things that people want to know about. Maybe I could imagine a future call could be kind of focusing on this, but more on the residential side of it. So, because we get questions about that as well. Geothermal, yes, JP. Well, let's do a geothermal call at some point. And thank you, Steve, for being here. We really appreciate your expertise.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, well,
Thank you
thanks
both.
everyone, and take good care and have a good night.
Thanks, Steve.